The world doesn't.
Part of the reason that people didn't believe is because of your father. Can you describe who he was?
My father was a very handsome, charming. He could recite 2 hours of poetry without ever looking away. A highly successful businessman and philanthropist. He was the head of our Denver Center for the Performing Arts. The Boy Scout building was named after him. He was so important that his obituary, when he died, was on the front page of the paper, which is almost never for a businessman. He was best pals with the head of the police. He was the best. Yeah, he was friends with the police and the fire, and he just had connections all the way through the city. I would never have had a chance. And there were so many people who did not believe me when my story came forward. No, that could not have been. He could not have done that. Not possible. Sorry, don't believe you. Because he was so credible and so outstanding and so charming. Yes, it happens in the nicest homes. It happens in the wealthiest homes. Yes, it does. Last night, I talked about Michael Reagan, President Reagan's son. 8 years old, second grader, camp counselor. It happens to our boys. It happens to our boys. And it happens to 1 in 3 to 4 girls. That's a startling number. We need to educate our children. One of the major reason why I travel and speak and why I wrote the book is because teenagers are inappropriately touching younger brothers and sisters, and no one's ever told them that is not okay. That's not okay. 14-year-olds comprise the largest number of sex offenders of any age group. 14-year-olds. Because we're not educating our sons and daughters, babysitters, our daughters as babysitters. 20 years ago, who would ever have thought about that? Well, I'm here to say to you, you need to talk to your teenagers, you need to educate them that a normal, natural sexual curiosity is fine, that being appropriate with younger or less powerful children is not okay and can cause a lifetime of trauma. They don't know that. Because we're not talking to them. And we need to. We can stop what's happening with teenagers. We can't stop my father. We don't know how to do that. But we do know how. We do know how to educate our children. And if I tell parents this, and they don't talk to their children, then they have a responsibility if anything happens. Because Maya Angelou said, we did what we knew. When we knew better, we did better. Okay, here's the knowledge. Now, what are you going to do with that? So I had a man say, it was a black tie dinner. This very tall, handsome, aristocratic man came up and he said, okay, so how do I start my conversation with my children? And I said, well, how about saying, I was at a banquet last night and I heard a woman who told me that I needed to talk to you. And I'm not really comfortable doing this, and I'm hoping that when you're my age, you will be more comfortable than I am, but we're going to have a conversation now. I said, how's that go? And he said, I can do that. Okay, I can do that.
It's not so hard.
You start with the truth. Somebody told me I needed to do this. And you know what? I'm not comfortable, but let's talk about this.
Do you see a day where we start to turn the corner, where the incest, the molesting, the child abuse starts to decline?
I see a difference with teenagers. I do. Educating. Although, I must tell you, pornography and the internet, now we're facing a whole nother thing that I'm reading about it now. I'm studying it because it is so frightening what these kids are doing. I mean, they're putting nude pictures of themselves on Facebook, and it's just, that's a whole nother thing that we need to really be careful what our children are doing on the internet. But it's education, it's talking. We need to talk. And I cannot tell you how many people say, I'm just not comfortable talking. Really? Okay, well, sorry, but do you talk to your kids about safe driving? Do you talk about drinking and driving and DUIs? Okay, well, what's the only drive that's stronger than wanting to drive a car? Sex drive. So I think we need to talk to our kids here because you have that responsibility. And when I say, and if you don't, and something happens, and you are responsible, you can see them clicking in saying, ooh, I never thought about that. Well, maybe I do need to do this. Maybe I do.
Were those thoughts, and just a couple more questions. I'm thinking of you on that stage winning the Miss America crown. Was that thought of your father in the back of your mind?
I had no memories.
You have no memories?
No memories of. I had no memories of incest when I was Miss America. In fact, they had never brought a family on stage before, and everybody knew my family. Burt Parks had met my family. I'm the youngest of 4 daughters. We're all 2 years apart. Just a beautiful family. My father very handsome. My mother beautiful. And Burt Parks stopped the show and said, "Bring the Van Derbur family up on stage." And they waited for them to walk all the way. They wanted them to see that I was a debutante. They wanted to see this debutante family, this beautiful, beautiful family. Here is the Van Derbur family. And I had no memories at that point.
But you knew something was wrong. You said it was the emotions.
I didn't know
before the memories. Before the memories, when you had the feelings.
Well, things were very hard for me. For instance, it was very difficult for me to be Miss America, and for me to speak publicly. And I know now that part of me was saying, "You are really an ugly, bad, terrible." Nobody would ever speak to you if they knew the truth about you. I'm being introduced as Miss America, and there's a part of me that knows that is, if they knew, I wouldn't. And so it's this push-pull. It was very, but I didn't understand why. I just didn't know why until I was 24, and then everything began making sense. I'd run from Larry, the boy that I had loved with all my heart and soul. I kept breaking up with him. And finally, when I understood, okay, I don't feel worthy of you. That's why I keep leaving you, because I don't feel worthy of you. Larry would say, "I understand. Let's talk about it. I understand. In time, let's just give it time." Mm-hmm. And I began to think maybe I would be worthy of marrying him. And he would just say, "It's okay." I'd say, "I need to break up with you again." And he'd say, "No, it's okay. It took me 2 years after I had memories to be able to marry him.
He's very patient.
Oh, he is. He is. Anybody who's read the book knows my husband walks to sainthood.
Yes, he does. And there was a point, though, where you did confront your father.
I did. And when my father knew, I was 40, mm-hmm. When my father knew why I was there, he said, "I'll be back in a minute." And he got a gun. I knew he had a gun in his pocket. I knew it. And I knew that he could kill himself or me or both of us. I know that sounds incomprehensible, but incest families, speaking about incest, you just don't do it. And I spoke to him anyway. Fortunately, my feelings of anger had not come up yet. It might not have turned out as well. Anyway, after our conversation and we talked, he pulled out the gun. We stood up to leave, and he pulled out the gun. And he said, "If you had come in any other way, I would have killed myself. The message is, if you're thinking about exposing me, take a good look." I got the message. And he said, "If I had known what it would do to you, I never would have done it." And I found out when I was 56 after he had died that he never stopped. He violated until the day he died at age 75. Never leave your child, ever, with someone who has sexually violated a child. They don't stop. Has anyone stopped? I'm sure. Do they stop? They do not. They violate until they die. They never stop. It's an addiction. It's something that they just can't stop doing. And so you cannot allow your child to be alone for 10 seconds with somebody who has violated a child.
We could talk all day.
You are a very compassionate interviewer. Thank you. You really are lovely. Thank you. That's why I do what I do. There are stories everywhere in this ballroom.
Yes. Yes.